I'm really honored to receive the Best Article Prize from Urban Studies for our article entitled Current Debates in Urban Theory, A Critical Assessment. This article was co-authored with Alan Scott, with whom I've worked for a very long time, and I'm happy to receive this prize on behalf of both of us. In this and a previous article, Scott and I critically examine three theories that are currently popular in the field of urban studies. And we find these theories deficient as statements about urban realities today. The three theories are post-colonial urbanism, assemblage theory, and the notion of planetary urbanization. So post-colonial urbanism is a theory that claims that cities in the global south today are unique and different from cities in the global north, and also cities throughout past history. Post-colonial urbanists, they argue that we need an entirely new theory to understand global south cities today. Now, Scott and I recognize that theory from the north has actually often been applied in an indiscriminate way to other regions of the world, and that this has led to certain errors of understanding cities in the global south. But post-colonial urban theory basically doesn't demonstrate that cities in today's global south deserve a totally different theory. So cities in the global south today, they're systems of concentrated land use, just like cities have always been since the first cities came about 6,500 years ago. And in cities all over the world, individuals, firms, households, governments, organizations of all stripes, we concentrate together because there are benefits of coming together to carrying out all kinds of human projects like production, consumption, leisure, governance, domination, exploitation, creativity, all the goods and all the bads of cities. The resulting proximity that we have is a strength of the city, and it's also what's specific about being in a city, that is that we're all crowded together. And it's also the source of a lot of the problems of the cities that emerge from density and propinquity and also competition for the same spaces. So we can get enormous insight by starting with this way of thinking, which is common to all cities. It helps us to see why cities are powerful economic engines, why they're sources of innovation, creativity, and social mobility, but also the dark side of urbanization, such as the existence of gutted out industrial cities, gentrification, segregation and homelessness, conflict, violence, and crime. Now, the specifics of how all these things are worked out, they change over time, over history, because we get new technologies. And they also have different varieties that depend on specific cultural, geographical, and economic context between the West and the East, the North and the South, the different continents, the different ways of life. But these are all variations on a common theme. And so cities in today's global South, they have processes and dilemmas that are really not so different in fundamental nature from the cities elsewhere and from cities throughout history as to require some totally different new way of thinking about them. Cities in the global North have gone through periods, for example, of being dominated by slums. In the 19th century, in the 18th and 19th century, Dickens's London or Zola's Paris were very much like the slum-dominated cities of a lot of parts of the global South today. So the supposed exceptionalism of the global South today is really not very exceptional, even though its specificities are important and they merit the greatest attention from the research community. Our point is that without a good foundational theory that draws from what we know about cities everywhere and over the past, even the right questions cannot be asked. And there's a kind of naivete of reinventing the wheel every time you see something in front of your face. Now, in the second part of our article, we critique what's known as assemblage theory. And assemblage theory is a claim that we can deal with the reality of cities by seeing them as random and unique patchworks of people and non-human objects together, sort of like spontaneous Rorschach blocks. Now, assemblage theory is also shared by a lot of post-colonial urbanists. Both try to compare cities, but the problem is, because they don't have a really good foundational theory, everything is sort of unique. And you have to try to build every city from the bottom up, from its details. And what happens is, the forest gets lost for the trees in these kinds of research approaches. So basically, assemblage theory leads to a kind of descriptive, storytelling, anecdotal, and kind of indiscriminate approach to urban investigation. Like post-colonial theory, it often also uses really overblown philosophical language that further muddies the waters. Finally, in this article, we review what's known as planetary urbanism. And this is another school of thought where people are arguing that the urban is no longer a distinctive scale of analysis or reality. Planetary urban theorists are arguing that urban life or connections to other cities are everywhere on the planet, so that deserts, rainforests, and the poles are somehow as urban as what we would conventionally call a city. This leads these theorists to make statements like, the city is only an ideological framing, that it's what they call a pseudo-concept, and that we should reject what they call methodological cityism. Now, everybody knows there's what we could call a long arm of the city today, and people in remote areas, they are in exchanges with cities. They're buying products, they're getting information, they're often traveling, they're caught up in these global chains that link them to cities that are far away. But the city is a distinctive scale of human interaction, and this can be seen empirically through the obvious phenomenon of density and the ways of life and the kinds of interactions that being in a dense environment allows. The dense spaces of Hong Kong and New York really are different from the Amazon rainforest in fundamental ways. Their economic roles, the type of productivity, cultural and demographic processes, the ways they're governed, the way people feel in them. So we argue in this article that the dense urban land nexus poses uniquely problematical scientific and political questions, dissolving it away through verbal gestures that assimilate the urban to the whole planet actually takes us backward. This paper and the preceding paper that we published on urban theory have attracted a certain amount of comment and reaction, as might be imagined, and we're gratified to have stimulated debate, and we're also gratified by the responses we've gotten from some of the people whose work we discuss in our articles. And we hope this process will improve the field of urban theory and research in addressing what we call the fundamental nature of cities, which is what ties our field together. And by doing this, we hope to better understand urban problems and processes today everywhere on the planet.